All right, I'm going to click. Got it. Just a minute. Now, we still have a black line at the top.
Okay, just, well, go ahead. This, I should see this.
There.
Okay.
There.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Before it leaves.
There you go.
So yes, my name is Chris Hadsel, and I've been director of the Little Conservation Team for, as we say, 23 years. We started in Vermont because we all live in Vermont. And we started with finding, 3 or 4 curtains that were in terrible shape. And they were primarily in historical societies that had moved into the upstairs of town halls once ADA requirements came in and the town halls stopped using their upstairs. And so they would turn over their upstairs to the local historical society. But if there was a curtain and it was torn and dirty, they just didn't know what to do with it. So I was the director of the Vermont Museum and Gallery Alliance. MJ Davis was my roving collections manager. We produced hundreds of workshops on collections care. And by that we meant costumes, furniture, maps, you name it, and these big, dirty, old curtains that some people had in their upstairs town hall rooms. So we got interested. We didn't know what they were. We didn't even know what they were made of or what the paint was. And there was nobody to tell us because nobody had ever paid any attention to these curtains. We started in the little town of Sudbury, Vermont with 5 of a set of curtains. We didn't even know how to handle them. We did know that we didn't want to work on the floor. That was one thing we knew. So we did know that we wanted to make an island of tables to work on, which is what we did here. And after my little talk, there's going to be a video that Susan made that's much more about the actual conservation of this curtain. So I'm not going to talk so much about what we did for this particular curtain because you're going to see it in the video. At any rate, we soon found that there were maybe 25 curtains in Vermont, 50, 75, 100, 150. There are actually 192. And as of the end of September, we will have conserved all of them. There are about a dozen that are in storage because there's no stage or because they are really, really battered. They're just not worth putting up. But we've still cleaned them up, wrapped them in Tyvek, because technology changes. And 50 years from now, they may be able to bring those curtains back when we can't do it today. So we have done every curtain. And then people started calling from New Hampshire and Maine saying, when are you coming to see us? And it had never occurred to me to go see them. But I got grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and started off to do first a survey in New Hampshire and then a survey in Maine. And by then I'd learned that the curtains are in town halls, Grange halls, opera houses, and the occasional former Elks Hall or other community center, but they're almost all of them in town halls and Grange halls. So I wrote to every town clerk and every Grange master, and that's how I basically started collecting the information. And then after that, it was word of mouth. We would go one place and people would come up to us and say, well, I know there's a curtain in such and such a place. And I'd write it down and then I'd go visit the hall and see if it was true, see if it was still there. We find them under the stages. We find them tied up with baling twine. We find them in outbuildings all over the place. And sometimes they're on stage and they're in pretty good condition, which was the case here. This curtain had never been taken down and put in the town garage. This curtain had always been here, which was a good thing. The only bad thing was it had always been here, it had been down, and there had been no blinds on the curtains, on the windows. So it is faded. It's faded from the incredibly strong colors that it would have started out as, because these curtains were positively garish. They were meant to be this was in the heyday of vaudeville and melodrama and variety shows, and they were meant to be amusing as well as historically interesting. So what I was going to do now, I'm going to run through some more information, some more curtains by O.L. Story, Orville Lincoln Story, who painted your curtain here in Washington. He was one of the three foremost Boston-based studios. There was him, there was L.L. Graham, and L.J. Couch. And those three, between them, had most of the business there were 87 opera houses in Boston. Now, of course, they weren't really opera houses. They were little variety halls, but they called themselves opera houses. But there was plenty of work for not only those three big ones, but lots of independent, small painters, studio painters. So, but he was one of the important ones. And he was also one of the most accomplished in New England. And we found his curtains all over Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. I found some in Massachusetts. They were premier curtain people. And this first picture is an ad from a 1902 city directory that I found, or rather not, I didn't find, someone else found for me, an old Boston city directory. And these old directories, used to have ads of all sorts. And we found several O.L. Story ads, but this particular one I liked just because it was, typical of his work, very frou-frou, very elegant and fun. And I think this is supposed to also be Chillon Castle, but it certainly doesn't look like it. Chillon Castle, which is the image in your curtain, was O.L. Story's most popular image. And he did it in many varieties. I'm going to show you some of them. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's fun the way he changes the roof line. He changes little details. It's the same place, but he makes it look different in every one because he was having fun with it. He wasn't just a mass produce, churn them out kind of place. So unfortunately, his son did take over, but his son did not have any children. I'm sorry, no. Orville Lincoln had no children. His brother took over when he died in the early 30s, and his brother ran the studio until the late 30s. But by the late 30s, he was done. The movies had really taken over, and any new money that came into a town, people wanted to spend on a movie house. They didn't want to spend the money on a new stage or a new set of curtains for their stages, because people were fascinated by the movies. And so that's what basically, that was the end of the whole genre of these painted theater curtains. All right, so now let me just see if I can.
You can just advance it on your computer.
I will do it on the computer if this doesn't work. It should work, but it doesn't. Okay, I think the battery just died. Well, we are, oops, now I'm going too fast. Okay, just a second, previous. I'm sorry, this is, somehow it's sort of lagging. Well, that is Chillon Castle. That's the way it actually looks. I went and visited it a couple years ago, and it's full of turrets and romance. It's also it's particularly the dungeons of this castle are what most people visit, or most people spend the most time in, because famously people were thrown into these dungeons under the towers and then just left to live out their lives. And Byron wrote a very famous poem called The Prisoner of Chillon, which was kind of like the kind of little book that was given as a prize to young ladies, for elocution or for, for being a good little girl, whatever. The Prisoner of Chillon, this romantic story about the man who, is imprisoned in the bottom of this castle, was hugely popular in America. And that's partly why it does turn up on curtains, because everybody knew it. They all knew. It was sort of like, a picture of the Eiffel Tower. You don't have to have seen the Eiffel Tower to know it's the Eiffel Tower. Well, that's the way this castle was for people. Now, let me see. Am I advancing?
Yep, you did.
Finally. Okay. I guess we're
It's
stuck.
just a small delay,
Oh, there's a delay. Okay.
so watch yours.
Okay. So I'm going to show you a few of the versions of this curtain, the same curtain that you've got, but with different versions. Here, the castle is slightly differently shaped, but also you see there are no, oh my goodness. Okay. I can't seem to control this because this is yet another one in Grafton Town Hall. And this one has, as you see, the drapery is always beautifully painted. And one of the features of O.L. Story was his drapes are pink. Other artists always had red drapery, or always had blue drapery, or always had gold drapery. But O.L. Story went for pink. And he also went for a lot of fringe. And all this fringe is a stencil. And the bottom fringe along the bottom, that's all a stencil, which you would put on, over and over again, and then paint the different colors. Because there are 4 or 5 colors in the bottom fringe. There's a dark yellow, there's a light yellow, there's a brown, there's a black edge, and all that is stenciled. And the same is true with the fringe. That's why the fringe is so regular, because they weren't doing that by freehand. The middle picture is all freehand. The flowers on the lower left and the lower right, those are just stencil as well, because those flowers turn up over and over again on different curtains. So the actual flower pot would have been a stencil, and then probably freehand with the flowers, frothing out of it. But a lot of stencils were used. They were tin, made of tin, and they used them over and over and over again. All right, now if I press
Do
this,
you have an arrow? Why don't you try your arrows?
just enter. Okay,
Okay, use your arrows.
I use my arrows.
Yeah.
This is new and different. Occasionally he threw in something other than the Chillon Castle. This is just a plain sort of country house sitting by a river. It's up in Barnet. But again, that pink drapery, those same sort of tassels. But this one is a whole different kettle of fish. Again, all that gold on the side and on the bottom they are stencils, but they are much more elaborate than before. And you see those flowers? Those are the same flowers that you saw before in other ones, and the same pink drapery and the stenciled drops. But this thing is as big as this entire room. This one is from the Woodsville Opera House, which is still standing, but in about 1915 or so, this is about 1905, but in 1915, they went bankrupt, and they turned the building into apartments and shops, and somebody, thank goodness, took down the curtain, rolled it up, and literally put it in a barn. So 50 years later, the owner of the barn contacted us and said, I've got a curtain, a big curtain. I said, well, how big can it be? And she said, oh, it's very big. And I said, okay, I'll come see it. Well, she had somehow in a truck, gotten it to the hall in Haverhill, and somehow gotten it on the floor. And there was hardly room for my feet around the edge of that curtain in the room. It was so big. There's a whole 8 feet that you can't see at the top of pink swarthy curtain that we had to wrap around a roller at the top in order to put this on the back wall of the hall in Haverhill because it was a smaller hall. So in order to, it's now hung at the back of the hall, so you can see more of it. But even so, 8 feet of it has been rolled up on top, just to give you an idea. And it's the old bridge at Concord, you know, the old North Bridge. And at the bottom, it's the Shot Heard Round the World poem. Again, very romantic, very sort of drippy, syrupy romance. But what a beautiful curtain. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Okay.
It will. Now here is a much battered version of the same curtain. You see, there's the bridge, there's the poem, but this curtain, they put patriotic flags instead of the drapes. And it, again, sat out in the light a lot. We never got to conserve this curtain. We were about to. In fact, they got a Moose Plate grant, but the town of Rochester sold the building it was in and failed to get the curtain out before the sale went through. They fully intended, I mean, we had a new home for it at the Rochester Opera House. It was going to be put up as a backdrop, but the town didn't get it out in time. So the new owner claimed it, and goodness knows where it is, what's happened to it. I have no idea. It's enormous. And you see, it is the same general picture, although at the bottom, there's much less beautiful gold drapery around it. We would have loved to have conserved that curtain. Now this one, this is still O.L.'s story, but looks very different. For one thing, he went for blue drapes. It's the only time we've ever seen one of his with blue drapes. It's also a sort of a romantic countryside rather than being a castle. And if it weren't stamped on the back, O.L. Story Scenic Company, just like yours, we would have sworn it was by somebody else because it just doesn't look like his work. We don't, it's hard to know exactly why it looks like this. The other odd thing about this curtain, it's only about 8 feet high. Your curtain, I think, is 10 feet high. So it's 2 feet shorter, but it's 25 feet long. It's short and long. So it's sort of an odd curtain, but there it is in a Grange in Maine.
Yeah.
He also, up in Barton, this is all that they have left. They would have had a grand drape. They would have had other scenes, but all they have left is the picture of their own pond, which is Crystal Lake up in Barton, Vermont. And 2 or 3 or rather 4 of the side ears. Now those side pieces you can see that have shadows, that's where actors could come in and out. But it also, by putting up the side ears, it hid all the junk on stage. All the leftover costumes, the bits, the furniture that always accumulated on stage. And across the top, the frilly bits, not the front pleated bit, which is newer, but the frilly bits across the top, those are called a teaser. And they hid the other rolls for the other curtains. And then later they also hid the lights that people would put up on stage. You don't have that because all you have is a grand drape. You don't have the backdrop curtains. Now I'm going to show you a set of what an actual set of curtains would look like by O.L. Story, or in fact by anybody. A set would always have a grand drape, and a grand drape is always right behind the arch, the proscenium arch. And the grand drape is, so the grand drape is instead of what we call drapery. It's before they ever had pull drapes. And there's always painted drapery as if there is drapery on the picture. And it's as if somebody has pulled aside the drapes to show you the picture frame that has the picture in it. That's the way a grand drape gets perspective, just like yours. And here we go with the pink, pulled away so you can see the castle with its funny second story. The second scene behind would always be a street scene. A street that is higher class than where you actually are, even in Boston, vaguely European, and usually with a piece of garden. So usually there's a garden, and then you are looking down the street and you have shops either on both sides or one side. And here in this case, the front, that piece that is across the front is a teaser. And that teaser again is there to hide the 5 rolls of the set. The 2 ears on the right and the left are, again, actually there are 4 ears here. They hide the sides and they allow the actors to come in and out. And they give you a sense of depth. All right, now the next one. In this case, in Reading, they had a garden scene. This is kind of an extra. That's not a normal part of a set. This one we found up over the ceiling. There was a trap door on the stage, and up over the ceiling of the hall, we found this curtain rolled up, completely black on top with mouse shit. I mean, the mice had scampered over this thing for longer than anybody knew. It was just a rumor that there was a curtain up there. Nobody had ever actually seen it. We got almost all the dirt out, but there's some dirt hidden up behind that teaser that was just ground in from the mice. But this one at the front, I wish I had my pointer working. At the front, these are 2
If you wanna
side
go and
ears.
stand up- Oh, you can't.
The 2 side ears we found in the hardware store across the street, up in his attic. And so those side ears, again, they match the grand drape, but they flesh out this beautiful garden scene. And one thing I learned from a friend of mine who wrote a chapter about these curtains in the book that I have over here, that fountain in the middle is actually a stencil. He can tell that it was folded in half and then opened up and pounced and turned into that beautiful fountain. So that when they made the stencil, that's how they got these 2 sides to be absolutely even, by folding in half, cutting it out, and then opening it up. And even the balustrade, even the spindles on the balustrade, those are stencils as well. So then the next scene is always a formal parlor. And the formal parlor usually has stenciled wallpaper, just as a parlor would have. Sometimes the middle part is left open like this one, so you could see out to the garden. That's the garden scene behind it. Sometimes it's a closed door, but this allowed you just to put a little table, maybe a couple chairs, and then you've got a parlor. And you can have any kind of love scene or interior scene that would go with a play. And again, it's fairly elegant. The stencil work around the doorway matches the stencil work in the ears. You see how they thought out this whole thing? It's just amazing how coherent everything was. Then there's always a kitchen or a rustic scene, because you have to have something as an alternative to that parlor for Uncle Tom's Cabin, for, the scenes that are not supposed to be in some fancy dancy Victorian parlor. In this case, the green of those walls matched the green that was still there of all the walls in the room. So when the curtain was down, and there actually were 6 matching green ears, but they were so boring, we didn't put them up. But with the green ears, the green curtain, and the green walls, you had a completely surrounding set. It was like you had a whole set, so that the actors were just part of the room. And then at the way back, there's always the country scene. Country scene is always at the way back. And in this case, again, the ears that matched the street scene, and we put them up for the other scene, they match the back country scene as well and provide the depth. And the country scene is usually generic. There's just a road or maybe some mountains. It's not meant to be any particular place. And across the top, actually, you can see the blue teaser. There's a blue sky. because by the time you get that far back, that front teaser doesn't do the trick of hiding everything that's back there. So there actually were two blue teasers hanging down that also helped hide the stuff behind them. So that makes a complete set, whether it's by O.L. Story or one of the others. And there are only three complete sets in all of New England. There's this one, there's East Vassalboro, Maine, which is also O.L. Story, but they're missing some of their ears, they're missing their teasers. They don't have quite everything, and it's a lot dirtier. And then there's one set by L. Graham in Jefferson, Maine, in a Grange Hall. Those are the only three complete sets left. Now this one is stamped O.L. Story, but it sure doesn't look like him. The pink drapery, you know, it's not quite as pink. It's stamped, but I think I don't think this came from his studio. I think that somebody may have bought the fabric. It was already stamped, and then they painted this advertising curtain in Jaffrey. It just doesn't fit O.L. Story. But since it's stamped O.L. Story, that's, you know, what we say. Now, okay, so that's the end of O.L. Story that I'm going to show you for now. But what I want to show you a little bit of is a contrast between what he did and what some other people did. And also a little bit of contrast of what curtains are all about. Albany is sort of like Washington. No, it's smaller than Washington, but it's just it's a town, it's a village, and you know, with a road going through it. It's got a town hall, a store, Grange, that's sort of it. And then some houses. So the Albany Town Hall, little white building, just much less impressive than yours, had two curtains in it, this one and another one. But the main point about this one, it had been rolled up and the roof had leaked so that the tar in the water seeped through the different rolls, which is why you have this recurring pattern of what we call tide lines. The tide lines have taken all the paint that was up in the ceiling, up in the sky, and just consolidated it along with the dirt up there in the sky. It also has at the bottom 6 inches of duct tape holding the entire group of panels together. And on the back side, every vertical panel was also held together with duct tape. They had literally, they were holding on to this curtain by the skin of their teeth. It is also a grand drape. You see the drapery, it's pulled aside. The picture frame bottom there shows at the bottom, but this is by a Vermont homegrown painter, not nearly as elegant as O.L. Story, but he's full of whimsy and he's actually pretty good. And I love his carriage and his horses and his little steamboat out there in the lake. And this would be about 1901, 2, 3, or 4, somewhere in there, before 1905. And there's the curtain today. So those awful tide lines have become pale clouds, which was about as good as we could do. The duct tape is gone. We mended the bottom, you know, made a new roller, stabilized all the back seams with patches and was resewing the seams and cleaned it up, and it looks a whole lot better. It's not perfect. You know, there's a lot of smudginess up there in the sky, but it's acceptable. And that's what we go for. This one is by the same man that painted the last one in Albany. This is Ben-Hur running around in the middle because Ben-Hur was so popular. Every farmhouse had a copy of Ben-Hur, you know, this great moral tale. And it was, you know, you find old battered copies of Ben-Hur all over the place. But the interesting thing here is that the central panel with the gold bottom and the middle pieces of drapes, that part rolls up. That part is 24 feet wide. The two side panels go all the way out to the side walls of the hall, and they cut doors in them to go back on stage, like your doors here on the side of your stage. But instead of having a proscenium arch, these two panels are each 15 feet wide. So the whole thing is 45 feet wide in 3 sections, but only the middle section rolls up. And of course, that doesn't look like the Colosseum, but it was his idea of the Colosseum. This is another view of Ben-Hur, obviously. Your phone. Because other than Chillon Castle, Ben-Hur turns up almost, well, in every state, put it that way. In Maine, it's in Wayne, Maine. In New Hampshire. Now, I'm not sure about New Hampshire, but in Vermont, we have 3 Ben-Hur curtains. This one is from the 30s, and it's very different style. It's much more dramatic. It's also a copy of an actual painting. So this painting exists. It's by an Italian whose name I cannot pronounce. But you've got the upside down horses, you've got the Romans saying, ooh, ooh. And then you have brown, rather dull drapery. The guy couldn't paint drapes. But he was a good copier of the painting inside. This is another high-end painter whose curtains we've found in Maine and Vermont. I haven't, oh yes, there are. Wilmot, is there a Wilmot? Wilmot, New Hampshire has Heiss paintings. Hewist, it's pronounced Hewist. He actually learned his trade in Austria. He was a painter before he and his family fled to the United States. They ended up in Troy, but he had learned his trade at art school. And you can tell he's a real painter, and those drapes are luscious. That's all painted, you realize, not drapery, it's painted drapes. And it all rolls up and tucks in behind the teaser. And here is another one that I think is very funny. This drapery looks more like a ghost Halloween, prop. I mean, the man had no idea. I think he just didn't know how to paint drapery. So he sort of took a wild stab at the idea of hanging fabric. And then he put this sort of Western scene in the middle. You still got fringe, you still got, sort of a picture frame around the picture, but it's, it's somebody else's idea of how do you paint a grand drape. Oh, this is one of those 3 other sets I was telling you about up in Jefferson, Maine by L.L. Graham, another Boston painter at the same time as O.L. Story. And Graham almost always used Venice as his central scene. So you find scenes of Venice all around the place. His drapery is not so good. I mean, really, are you going to pull the drapes together sort of in the middle like that? And they look stiff. They look, again, his heart was not in his drapery, but he did a beautiful scene of Venice. This is a 2-story Grange Hall in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's at a crossroads in northern Maine, and they have a complete set, the street scene, the 2 interiors, the country scene, and this grand drape, all by a painter from Monmouth, Maine. And I don't know why a lowly Grange Hall ended up with all these, unless they had a summer stock tradition in their town. But this one I love because it's the stranger with a black horse asking the way of the man on the camel. And you've got pyramids, and you've got the frame of the painting is almost like a platter, an enormous platter that is sitting on a kind of a framework. It's very beautiful, and it's just this plain Jane little Grange Hall. And this is the only one that these people painted. They were local carriage painters. They painted stripes on carriages. That's what they did for a living, these two guys in Cabot. And they were asked to paint a curtain, and they copied the Immigrants from the Plains, this famous painting that turned up in every school book. You know, the Crossing the Plains. It's a famous painting, but they added this frou-frou. They added flowers, they added musical instruments, they added, you know, these columns. I mean, what were they thinking? But it's just a lot of fun. And there it is in lowly little Cabot Town Hall. It's just hilarious. Now this one, I show you just because it's obviously by Maxfield Parrish. It's the only curtain he ever did. It was his hometown. And the curtain is actually, if you're looking at this, it's the middle, way back, small section that has the dark line under it. That's the curtain. All the rest of it are ears that are built up, painted with different trees to make you feel like you're in the forest. And then across the top are two of these teasers that are all cut out and then painted to look like leaves. So the end result is that you are deep in the forest. And around the inside of the green arch are something like 150 light bulbs. And they were all painted different colors. I mean, not each one, but they were different colors on the light bulbs, which they managed to recreate. They'd all burned out, of course, but the chips of paint were still on them. So they figured out what the paint was. They replaced the light bulbs, painted them. And when you flip switches, it changes from noontime to late afternoon, to early evening, to morning. This is the morning. And then you get midnight. So you can have different times of day with the same set. And that's the kind of thing that they love to play around with those days. You know, one set, but you could make it look really different. This is one of your New Hampshire guys, Hillsborough. Oh my, 6 or 8 places around New Hampshire. And he loved his drapery. He's got, you know, white liners. He's got little naked cherubs pulling the drapes so that you can see the picture. And then the picture in the middle, in the picture frame, it's just the bridge. And that bridge is still there in Hillsborough. So the content of the actual picture is pretty mundane, but he dressed it all up with the fake marble and the curlicues. It's just a great curtain. And he has a companion curtain that is an advertising curtain that has a blimp across the middle of it. And I think this is the last one I'm going to show you because there's no drapery, but it's a grand drape. It's right behind the opening. It's actually that frame, that picture frame is by O.L. Story. And then a local artist painted the middle of a local scene. He was a very good artist, but he bought the curtain ready-made. He bought it with the frame and the right size, probably came with the ropes and the pulleys and everything else. And then all he had to do was paint the middle. So that's the one up in Sandwich, New Hampshire. And I think that is my last slide.
Okay.
So at this point, we'll go to the video that Susan has made that's really entirely about this curtain. Okay, it's short.
And maybe what we could do is we could move the screen. Oh no, can't move the screen. Sorry. All right. Pardon me?
Stop the share. I need to
Stop the share.
stop the share.
There you go.
Okay.
Ooh, we look scary in the dark.
Ooh.
Can anyone find the lights for a second? Okay, so let me see here. Now I need to be able to share my screen.
Oh,
Yeah,
there we
thank
go.
you. Okay.
Just so we get going. Oh, I'm back on.
You're back, and don't worry.
All right.
Okay, so now this should be, so this is, if I'm lucky, when I hit the play button, you're going to see the video. It features several people in the room here tonight from July, this past summer, when Chris, as I mentioned earlier, Chris and her
For some reason, I'm not getting any sound now.
Sharon, what would we do without you?
The two boxes you have to check at the bottom.
Okay, so what I need to do is do screen share.
Yes.
And then when I choose
I have,
it,
I
okay,
have sound.
okay, now I'm gonna go to this one. Thank you. Learn something new every day. How do I get this to start again?
Form of public art.
Ah,
Of public art. Such was the case in Washington, New Hampshire.
there we go. Now, let's see. Make sure we got enough sound for everybody. And hopefully that'll be it. Let's try that again.
Did you know that between 1890 and 1940, hand-painted stage curtains were literally the front and center feature in northern New England town halls? Grange halls, theaters, opera houses, they were ever present at variety shows, high school graduations, weddings, public lectures, and town meetings. They were functional necessities, but they were also a popular form of public art. Such was the case.
Let's see. Bill, do you have any suggestions on the volume? It's all up as far as it goes. Because you're just listening to it off of my computer. The left of the blue line? What? That's up as high as it goes?
Yeah, that's,
That's at 100. My over here, let's see. Click on what? That's as high as it goes.
all right, that's up. Yep, click on it again.
Where it says mute?
No, now it's muted.
Washington, New Hampshire.
Is this on a flash?
Yes?
Put it on here and try it from here. It's just no lag.
There was a lag.
There was a lag.
Yeah, there was a lag. It's the volume I'm worried about now. That I can't get the volume up. Right. Right. People on Zoom can hear it just fine.
Do they have a lag?
Unless, huh? Well, what I'm gonna probably have to do is I don't think we have any.
If people on Zoom turn off their cameras, it might help with the lag.
Oh, possibly.
So consume less bandwidth.
So we're only caring about the sound right now. If everybody else could just hold on, please, and we'll
Yeah,
work
I've
our
got-
magic.
The volume, no, but Matt's right, that the volume is only coming off of my computer.
That's right. So there is a, I thought we had synced your computer sound with the speaker, the sound system here. So go to
What do you want to open up here then? Oops.
wireless or Bluetooth.
What is it? Please remove this away from the shared application. What does that mean? That's a new one on me. But what have I got here to?
Show Bluetooth devices.
Where can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, it's right there, but where that other thing's coming from, I have no idea.
Just stop
There
share.
you go.
Let's try that again.
See if we've got,
Where am I looking? Do you know? Here?
yeah, click on that. That's discoverable. Yeah, the Zoom people can hear it, it's just in the room here that we have a problem. Thank you.
Okay, I can't, this is all that's showing.
Yeah, it's not showing you, okay, hang on.
Audio, wait, this is the, right, but this says I'm connected, right? So maybe I've got some, I don't want to disconnect, because that's this, right?
Okay, yeah, hang on, let me,
Is it on here then? You need a light? He has one? Okay. Oh.
Part Zoom and part live classes, can you imagine? I mean, I suppose once they get it organized, but still.
Then it changes every time. Like you said, it's something new for us. In any case, it's what we found, right? Is that every time we have something here and we're trying to do this, there's a different element and it changes. Yeah. So what we may need to do is everyone in the room on our email distribution? Did everybody get the email about the list? Is there anybody who's not? I know the people who, Matt was a big part of making this video. I'm pretty sure he's not on our distribution email, but otherwise I can just send the link. I can put it up on the website and send you the link, and then you'll be able to see it at your. Not worry about what? The Zoom audience. Well, somebody can't hear it. I mean, because here, if I can play it, but that doesn't change anything because the volume is what you can't hear. Oh, they can hear it. Yeah, they can hear it. The projector and that computer are set up as an attendee on Zoom. Not in the room. I don't think so. Oh. Well, we can test that here.
My husband wants to say it's beyond my table. They're trying to figure out if there's a speaker.
I think what we're going to have to do is share the list.
so the sound should be able to
It's all very exciting.
computer to these speakers.
My sound is.
It just
My sound is.
So if you want to take a photo, you can move it. My computer's over here. Oh, there's an idea. Okay. Yeah. Well, we can just get it a little closer. Okay, so we can get it a little closer. We're going to turn this back on, right? And go back to here. The folks on Zoom. Am I sharing my screen? Hang on. No. Okay. that won't do much either, will it? Okay, so let me go back to share my screen here. Okay, well, that's it. Maybe by sitting a little closer, if you want to move in a little bit closer, you'll be able to hear it better. And you'll be able to see it. So let's just try this, and then I will send a link out to folks so you can hear it better on your own computer. So that should we should start back at the beginning here.
Did you know that between 1890 and 1940,
Now there's no sound again.
hand-painted stage
What happened to the sound? It didn't go, I didn't mute, I didn't mark at 100%. Why does it, oh, it thinks it's headphones. Well, just turn it on. Let's see. Uh-oh. Is that it? Is that from the speaker? It thinks it's headphones, Bill. Okay, well, the headphones are on. It thinks it's Bluetooth headphones. Cool. All right, we figured that out. Let's try it again. Now plug your ears because we're going to get blasted out of the room.
Did you know that between 1890 and 1940, hand-painted stage curtains were literally the front and center feature
Oh, I have to do it
in
each
northern
time?
New England town halls?
Yeah, well,
Grange halls, theaters, opera houses, they were ever present at variety.
that, yeah, you gotta stop the share.
All right, we get one more shot. We appreciate your patience. Thank you. And,
Okay, now they are.
okay, yeah. And so we're going to go back to this one. Why that delay? That's the sound, because it's Bluetooth. Can you deal with 5 minutes of...
shows. High school graduations, weddings,
No.
public lectures, and town meetings.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. You'll get to watch this in the, the comfort of your own home. I'm sorry about that. Actually, we should probably, what have we got here? Zoom. Say, you can stop recording.